Welcome to the John 3:30 podcast. He must increase, I must decrease is the message John 3:30 invites us to live. Incorporating this into our everyday lives can be a challenge. What keeps your fire burning? We have many wonderful ways to stay close to our faith, whether it be the Mass, spiritual readings, prayer, adoration, or the Rosary. This is Catholic Faith Life, and here's our host, Jason Nunez.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the John 3:30 podcast. This is your host, Jason Nunez, and welcome to episode number 107. Thanks for coming back. I know it's been a couple of weeks since kind of a broken record here where I kind of say that every so often, but hey, projects come up and different kind of, life situations happen there. But the important thing is that we are coming back as frequently as we can with new episodes. And I'm very happy to have with me today a gentleman and a friend of mine that I've actually gotten to know due to COVID-19 and because of the whole stay-at-home order and everyone staying home more often and trying to find ways to stay in community. I can safely say that I didn't know David Boland before COVID-19, but I'm happy to say that I do know him now. And he's someone that's like, whenever I've spoken with him and just kind of seen him on Zoom, it's like, man, I want to get to know more about him. So now is that opportunity. So, Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, indeed. And before we get into our conversation today, we'll go ahead and begin this episode the way we begin all of our episodes, and that is in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. From the belief that I have to earn your love, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that I am unlovable, deliver me, Jesus. From the false security that I have what it takes, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear that trusting you will leave me more and more destitute, deliver me, Jesus. From all suspicion of your words and promises, deliver me, Jesus. From the rebellion against childlike dependency on you, deliver me, Jesus. From refusals and reluctances in accepting your will, deliver me, Jesus. From anxiety about the future, deliver me, Jesus. From resentment or excessive preoccupation with the past, deliver me, Jesus. From restless self-seeking in the present moment, deliver me, Jesus. From disbelief in your love and presence, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of being asked to give more than I have, deliver me, Jesus. From the belief that my life has no meaning or worth, deliver me, Jesus. From the fear of what love demands, deliver me, Jesus. From discouragement, deliver me, Jesus. That you are continually holding me, sustaining me, loving me. Jesus, I trust in you. That your love goes deeper than my sins and failings and transforms me. Jesus, I trust in you. That not knowing what tomorrow brings is an invitation to lean on you. Jesus, I trust in you. That you are with me in my suffering. Jesus, I trust in you. That my suffering, united to your own, will bear fruit in this life and the next. Jesus, I trust in you. That you will not leave me orphan, that you are present in your church. Jesus, I trust in you. That your plan is better than anything else. Jesus, I trust in you. That you always hear me and in your goodness always respond to me. Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me the grace to accept forgiveness and to forgive others. Jesus, I trust in you. That you give me all the strength I need for what is asked. Jesus, I trust in you. That my life is a gift. Jesus, I trust in you. That you will teach me to trust you. Jesus, I trust in you. That you are my Lord and my God. Jesus, I trust in you. That you are my beloved one. Jesus, I trust in you. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That is the Litany of Trust, written by Sister Faustina Maria Pia, SV, from the Sisters of Life in Suffern, New York. If anyone is interested in that litany there. If you just simply Google Litany of Trust, that's the first search result that you'll find there. So just want to give a quick plug there to the Sisters of Life and that beautiful prayer. Alrighty, go ahead and get to our episode. And Dave, thanks for going with me on that journey, along with everyone listening along as well. Dave Boland, if you can do us a favor and share with all of us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So, as you said, my name's David Boland. I'm 41 years old. I am married to my college sweetheart. We're celebrating 16 years later this week, actually. And we have 4 children. So I'm father of 4, 2 of which are in the house. So it's a good chance one of them will run in and interrupt the podcast here. So I'm hoping they respect the closed door, but we'll see. I grew up in Southern California, in San Diego, and I grew up in sort of a military family. My father was in the Army for 12 years, but he got out when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So, and we lived in Germany before, so that was kind of a big piece growing up, is that we had this affiliation with the Army, but I didn't have to necessarily live the military brat lifestyle of moving around all the time. It's a little bit of best of both worlds in that way.
Right.
Partly because of my dad's Army time. He was a Navy brat, a true Navy brat. His father was a captain in the Navy, and my dad went to 3 different high schools, and I forget how many times he said he moved, but I mean, it was just about yearly or average more than once a year. So it was important to him to not have his kids moving around. But there's been a long military lineage in my family, and so probably as a result of that, when it came time for me to go to college, I thought ROTC sounded like a pretty good way to get college paid for, and I was sort of interested in serving the country and then joining the Army. And so I did Army ROTC. I went to school at Claremont McKenna College, which is a small private school, liberal arts school in Los Angeles. And that's where I met Amy, my wife. We were both on the cross country and track teams together. And then I commissioned as a transportation officer in the Army and spent 5 years as a transportation officer. This was 2001. I was actually at the officer basic course when September 11th happened. I remember them coming in and basically telling us that some planes had flown into the World Trade Center, and they sent us all home. And it was pretty clear that our careers were going to look a lot different than we thought, the day before. So I spent 5 years as a transportation officer, deployed twice to Iraq in that time, and then decided I wanted to have a career change and applied to physical therapy school, which the Army runs a physical therapy school. And so I got accepted to that, and that moved me to San Antonio. So the first time we lived here in San Antonio was when I was going through PT school with the Army Baylor physical therapy program. After PT school, I was assigned in the DC area, and so we had 5 years in Washington, DC. I had 2 assignments there. I had the privilege of working at the Pentagon and being the chief of physical therapy at the Pentagon, which is a really cool place to work. Pretty cool to go out for a lunchtime run and run by all these world famous natural monuments and stuff. And then I had the opportunity to apply for what we call the LFED, or Long-Term Health and Education Training Program, which is a fancy way of saying the Army sent me to get a PhD. So it was a phenomenal opportunity. I still continued to get paid. I was still at that point promoted to major in the Army. But my full-time job was to go get a PhD, and it was at school of choice. So I was able to get into UCLA and go get a PhD in physiology, exercise physiology at UCLA. And then once I completed that, my next assignment was to come back here to San Antonio and teach at the Army Baylor Physical Therapy Program. And so that's what I've been doing since 2016. So the last 4 years we've been here. We were really excited to come back because we liked it the first time we were here, and hopefully setting up long-term roots. That's kind of the plan.
Wow, excellent. Well, first and foremost, and I missed this opportunity when I interviewed Dr. Gary Legault. And after listening back to it again, I realized, I was like, man, I missed this. I'm not going to make that same mistake again. So this not only goes to you, Dave, but it also goes to Gary as well. Thank you too for your service. Very much. Thank you too for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
As you can tell from just my little brief bio there, I've gotten a lot out of it. So
Indeed.
I think it's yeah.
Indeed, and wow. So, thanks for providing that information. I think not only is it great to share that, but it's a great way for any parents listening that may be sitting back and wondering, gosh, my kiddo's in high school now, or they're in middle school, or we're now starting to kind of think long term for our kids. A lot of parents don't have that secret college fund tucked away for their kids, and so they may be starting to think, how can I have my kids go to school and not automatically go to the school loan route, right? So
Right.
I think the way you've laid out kind of your past up until now kind of gives a path for some parents to go, hey, that might be an option. So uh, given the current climate, those thoughts, those parents may think that, they may not, but hey, at least there's an option there, and thanks for sharing that. So, husband, father, you have these different hats that you wear daily. More than one hat. You're working from home, so you're wearing more than one hat a day at the same time there. So what I want to ask you is, how do you keep your fire burning for our Catholic faith? What works for you?
Yeah. So I knew you were going to ask that question, and honestly, it's that question that makes me feel, I don't know, inadequate or not a lot to contribute here, in that I don't feel like I do anything extraordinary outside of kind of the normal Catholic traditions. So we go to mass weekly. We certainly discuss Christ and God regularly. We say grace before church. I pray with my daughter before she goes to sleep. I don't feel like any of that is really kind of overreaching or even getting extra creative. So yeah, I don't know that I have a very interesting answer to that. So I was thinking about, like, gee, what can I say, to not be completely boring on that.
Not at all. Not at all.
And it's an interesting question of keeping the fire burning. And I guess I don't know that I would describe it that way for me, and if I think about like a campfire, to keep it kind of burning and raging, for one, if you're building a campfire, that doesn't stay raging very long, right? You can put a lot of fuel on there and it'll burn really high and you get a lot of big flames. But those go out relatively quickly unless you keep tending to it and adding more fuel. I wouldn't describe my faith that way. I would describe it almost more when you get to the point where there's just a bunch of embers burning, and they just kind of stay on their own, right? You have this nice, stable, warm glow that doesn't require a lot of crazy messing with the firing. And that's just kind of how I have always felt. I've got this, for whatever reason, I feel like I have this stable foundation of faith that I don't feel the need to kind of continue to do great, extraordinary things to kind of stoke. So I guess I don't consider going to weekly mass extraordinary. Some people might consider it that way, but I grew up that way. I've always done it. So yeah, I guess I just don't feel like I've added anything outside of what I was brought up doing.
Understandable. And because you see for yourself, that's the way you've been brought up. So to you, it may feel like, hey, this is what I know. And before I continue, for some reason, the yard maintenance team is on my podcast schedule, because all day long the leaf blower guy was not around where I live. And about a minute or two after I hit the record button, they kind of come by here. So for those listeners, and even for you, Dave, I apologize for the leaf blower in the background there. But for some reason, they know when I hear record, because as soon as I hear record, they kind of come around this area and they're kind of almost outside the window, and just kind of camping out there for the duration of the episode there, but that's just kind of how it works, right? So
I think it's
just
great, man. And it's a reminder of, life happens, right?
yeah,
There's
yeah.
no,
Life happens, and for a little while, I didn't have to worry about leaf blowers or airplanes flying over because flights were few and far between. But even something that my wife noticed the other day is we're noticing more planes kind of flying by
yeah,
as the days passed, right? So kind of a daily reminder that things are kind of picking up now, which I guess is definitely a good sign. Uh, Kind of back to our conversation here, though, it's what I see, and this is just my observation. Looking at my screen, into your Zoom window, because that's really been all of our interactions have been this way on Zoom. Um,
yeah. This is my life to you.
yeah, exactly. So, you and I met because of the virtual prayer group that was happening every single day, right? And there was a pretty good while where it was every day and every night. There was Dave and there was his daughter, and it's like that was awesome to see. And in you describing what you do, what I see and what I notice is that it's intentional, and I feel like to be Catholic, you have to be intentional about what you're doing. And I'm not just speaking about, going to mass on Sunday, praying before meals, anything like that, and really anything we do in life, we are intentional, because there's people that are on automatic pilot, and they kind of let their emotions get the best of them. And, as human beings, that's going to happen to everyone. But, as Catholics, when we recognize that we've sinned, to get back in communion with God, what do? We go to confession. We're intentional about recognizing what we've done. For those of us that go through a daily examine at night to go over our day, what were my areas of opportunity? We're being intentional about becoming the best version of ourselves, to kind of steal a line from Matthew Calley, right? But that's just kind of my observation of your Zoom window, the background of your office there. But that's really what I see. And seeing in one of the past Zoom meetings, I believe it was your daughter that led us she led us either in a closing prayer or in a divine mercy, or in if I'm not mistaken, it might have been the rosary. But it's like, wow,
I think it was in the Divine Mercy. She
yeah,
liked the speaking part. Yeah.
that's right. It's like that's awesome. Like me being the age of your daughter, I probably didn't know what the Divine Mercy was. Much less try to even tackle the speaking parts in front of a virtual room of strangers. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that I feel is awesome.
That was, I will say that, we have never done anything like that. And so just that opportunity to jump in on the prayer meetings you were leading, and the diversity that you brought each day. So it wasn't just even as good as a rosary every day would have been, or, just kind of the same style of prayer would have still been very fulfilling, but you really brought some great creativity to broaden the exposure to what our Catholic faith has to offer, which I thought was pretty neat.
It is, and that's why I like that question of how do you keep your fire burning for our Catholic faith? Someone like you were like, well, hey, this is who I was raised. This is what we do. I don't feel like it's anything over the top. It's that question. It gives everyone an opportunity to share what they do, even though to them it may not be over the top. To someone who's listening, they may have never even considered that as an option. Praying with your child before they go to sleep. Someone may have never considered that. Praying before meals. There's many different aspects of our faith that are talked about on these episodes, where I've gotten feedback where it's like, wow, I never knew that was a thing, and because of that, I'm going to look more into it. And it's like, thanks be to God. That's why we're doing this right now. It's just another tool in your toolbox, or to kind of use the example you gave there. It's for that campfire, to keep that fire going. It's another log. It's gonna engulf it in flames when it's on there, and it's gonna bring it down to that ember to keep it sustaining. And that's kind of how we are as humans sometimes. Where if I'm sure there's folks out there like me where there's something new, I kind of dive in head first into it and try to kind of learn all I can about it. And after a while, it's like, okay, I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. I'm probably going to use that later on. I've learned it, I've gone through it, I understand it now. So let's kind of move on to something else here. But I know that I have that as well, as a
Yeah.
resource. So you mentioned something during your introduction, and I think it's timely, just because as of recording this episode, today is September 14th. This past Friday was September 11th. If you don't mind, I want to take some time to kind of talk to you about that.
Sure.
So you were already in the military when September 11th happened, and you mentioned that your life was going to be different compared to the day before, the way you envisioned your future. Can you just kind of speak a little bit about the impacts of the events of that day and how it's kind of changed the trajectory of your career and your life?
Sure. So prior to 2001, the military was coming off of really the Cold War. There was Desert Storm in there, but it was mostly kind of a Cold War mentality. And so all through ROTC, we did training that simulated Vietnam-style tactics, and we were really learning how to lead a squad in like a jungle type environment. And then even getting into the basic course. So I had done 4 years of training in ROTC, and then 2 months of training in the basic course. It's about a 4-month course. It's about halfway through the officer basic course. And it was very much a mentality of the majority of your time is spent training. Like that's what your days are going to be like, training. Someday we might go off to war. And I remember specifically one class where they were telling us historically the U.S. goes to war about every 20 years. And so consider Desert Storm. Okay, hey, if you guys do 20 years, pretty good chance you'll deploy in some sort of combat environment at some point during your career. And that was maybe a week before September 11th.
Wow.
And so it was interesting to get that whole, like, this is this thing, this theoretical possibility, gosh, almost if we're lucky, we'll get that experience, to all of a sudden, this is visceral now, this is happening, we're going to go train, but we're not training for this theoretical thing. We're training for when we're going to go over and really have missions and stuff. And so it was more, it was just that, like, this is no longer theoretical. Obviously on September 11th, September 12th, we didn't know who had hit us. We didn't know what it was going to look like, but it was quite clear we had been attacked and we were going to respond, and so it was just a matter of time until they figured out where to send us.
Wow.
So that was,
Going through those events, kind of thinking back to that time, I was not as close to my faith as I am now. Back in 2001, I was not even married at the time. My wife and my wife and I were actually dating, but we were not engaged or married as of yet. It's really been about 8 years that I've been becoming closer and closer to my faith since moving here to San Antonio. But being, back home in El Paso back in 2001 and remembering that, I don't really remember thinking about or factoring my faith into anything of my thoughts of what happened. I remember being sad. I remember being shocked. I remember thinking, how could this happen? It sounds like your upbringing was, a lot more in your faith. Mine was too. I went through my sacraments at, the typical ages, but I didn't pray before my meal. I didn't go to church every Sunday during that time. My parents wish I did, but unfortunately I didn't. Do you remember during those times, September 11th, 12th, during that time at all, kind of looking at this from the lens of your faith?
I wouldn't say I have a specific memory of that. It certainly wasn't something that caused me to question anything.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, that whole feel, like I described, that feeling of kind of the stable coals burning. I feel like I've always kind of had that, and so this is maybe a gust of wind that came over, but it's not going to blow them out.
Sure.
And so it didn't cause me to question anything. I didn't really do anything that I can recall now to fall back on my faith to prop me up. I didn't have any personal tragedy. I didn't know anyone so I wasn't touched in quite the same way that if somebody had known someone who was killed or personally affected.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have any good stories around that, or any ways that it either pulled me away or caused me to get stronger.
Since that time, right, with me getting closer to my faith, it's probably been about 3 years now, 4 years now. I had opportunity to go with my wife to New York. She worked there for about a year and a half. She'd fly out to New York Sunday morning, fly back home San Antonio Friday night, Sunday morning, Friday night for about a year and a half. That was her life, living out of a suitcase and living out of a hotel room. On her first trip up there, on her last trip up there, I had the opportunity to go with her and kind of do some sightseeing. So we did go to the 9/11 memorial, and I remember we did the whole tour, and all that's fascinating, and just seeing, all the different, sections they have there and the different sites, and I don't like to call them artifacts, but just the different remnants, right, from the building and from the rubble, and it's broken off by sections, and just kind of being in awe of all this. And you see it on TV and you live through it, but when you're there and you're seeing this, and you're a foot away from this pillar, right, that is so damaged, and these stairs that the people ran down in panic, and firefighters ran up the opposite direction, and it's a different feeling. What really overcame me was when we were at the pools, which were the two sites where the actual buildings were. Yes. And along the border of those pools, it has the names of all the victims, right? And I remember standing there with my wife. We were just standing there, looking at the water and just looking at the names and like reading the names. I just kind of remember standing there and just feeling this overwhelming urge to just pray for these people that were right in front of me and for their family members. It's their family members have an annual reminder of the worst day of their life. And it's like that's not a wound that's going to heal over short or even medium period of time. And it's going to last for generations, because that's something that's going to be handed down from generation to generation. So I remember just standing there, and I just feel compelled. I could still remember having this feeling of putting my hand on top of each one of the names that were placed on the border in that one section that I was standing in front of, and just saying their names and praying for them, for their soul, and for their family members. And when I was done with all their names, it's like, okay, now I need to pray for the hijackers.
I knew you were gonna go there. Yeah.
And it's like hard. That to me was like, there's as a human, there's a conflict there, but as a Catholic, it's like they're people too. They're children of God too. I did. I could not pray for them by name, because honestly, I couldn't remember their names. But so I just remember praying for them and for their family members also. And it's like, whew, when I was done, it's almost like not to poke fun of anything, but this is the only thing that I can describe it as. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movie Old School.
Of course.
So there's the scene.
I want to hear this tie-in, though.
Right? Yeah. So hopefully this connects the dots for folks, right? So there's a scene where they're debating, right? And Will Ferrell just kind of goes into this debate mode, and he just nails the rebuttal or whatever his task was. And the opposing team, who was then gonna give their rebuttal, they were like, he's right.
Yeah,
and then
that was perfect.
And then he just kind of snaps out of it, like, whoa, what happened? Like, it was almost like I had that whoa, what happened moment. Whereas I was done, and it's like, okay, like I remember opening my eyes and just kind of standing there and looking at the pools and looking at my wife, and it's like, okay, I'm back. It's just thankfully, my wife's amazing, but she actually snapped a picture of me praying like that, over those names in that section there, the pools. And so it's one of those where I have a faint memory of doing it, but that picture helps take me back there.
Yeah.
That's
What's impressive is you're telling that story. When you first said you started, I knew you were going to say you started praying for the hijackers, and of course we're supposed to pray for our enemies, and of course that's so hard because you're angry.
right.
But as you were describing it just you describing praying for it, I can't imagine how much more having to go through the act of choosing to go through the act of praying for them.
Sure.
I'm thinking, well, these are. It's very sad what they chose to become, but these were obviously very misled people, and they were lied to, and so they, like you said, they're humans too, and with all the flaws as well, and they're susceptible to being misled by misinformation. Just realizing that, it's like it creates so much more compassion for people that 30 seconds before I was pretty angry. Just
right?
the thought of, so it's a powerful thing to pray for your enemies.
It is. It's something that I've done in the past, even before that moment. But it goes back to what I mentioned earlier about being intentional, right? Being intentional about what you're doing. So with your interactions with your children as a father, in kind of, showing them the faith and teaching them the faith, teaching them the prayers, right? And just being that example for them. Can you just kind of walk us through, how Dave, the father, would do that with his kids?
I mean, that's really where I feel like I don't have the good contribution of anything super creative, so it's just, we take them to church every week. And perhaps that's where, when we weren't allowed to go to church for all those months, where I started feeling it. It's like, wow, this is going to now become, those coals are going to die off, right? Because we're going to not have anything to kind of keep it going. And it would be so easy to let them die off. And then fortunately, this guy and he started a online prayer group that I was able to join. That worked out well. But no, I mean, really, I think being open, talking about Jesus and talking about God regularly. I try to make it not a big deal. It's not like some special thing. Kind of like the way that you're told as you're bringing up kids, like sex ed, alcohol, these things shouldn't be this like, oh, don't talk to me about that, right? That needs to be very approachable. It almost needs to kind of be normal so that it's not scary, it's not wrong. Same thing I try to do with religion. It's just part of the daily life. And part of the daily conversation. My kids, so I have 4 children all in about 38 months. So my oldest and youngest go to Catholic school. And then I have a boy who's 11. Then I have twin boys that are both 10, and they're autistic. So they don't speak. They don't go to the Holy Spirit, but they do go to the local public school and get very good care there. And then my daughter is 8. And so she and my oldest both go to Holy Spirit. And so I think that helps normalize it as well. And that's what we really like about Catholic school and why it's worth it to send our kids, is that even in traditional educational subjects, there's always that sort of background of Jesus is a part of this. You can have a religious example, and it's not a big deal. It's not isolated to just Sunday school or Mass or something.
So having that amount of kids in that kind of amount of time, it begs the question: how are Sunday mornings in your household getting ready for Mass?
Better now.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah, as the kids get more independent, it helps. There was a time it was rough. I mean, really, we had, especially when the twins were first born. So before we had our daughter, we have 2 infant twins that just, for one, when you have twins, you're not sleeping at all. Like probably for 9 months, we woke up every 1 to 2 hours during the night. And so then you get to this point where you're not operating well because you're just so fatigued. And then you've got kids that totally depend on you and can't get themselves ready. So yeah, there was years and years where it was pretty rough to get to Mass and then try to keep everybody quiet in Mass. But I think we're kind of through the gauntlet. I'm knock on wood, I'm going to jinx it by saying that, but I think we're kind of through the gauntlet now. Our oldest and youngest are very independent. They can be told, go go get ready for mass. And the other two help out quite a bit. So getting the twins, they still need assistance getting dressed, but we can hold pants out for them to step into instead of actually having to do everything. So that helps. But yeah, it's interesting. I grew up also one of 4 kids growing up, and so it was hectic even then with 4 completely typical kids. It's just a lot of people to get ready, get fed, and get out the door.
Indeed. Whoever wrote that song, Easy Like Sunday Morning, didn't have kids to get ready to go to mass, right?
No, and I don't think they were trying to go to mass either. I think they were taking Sunday as this chill day.
Yeah, they rested on the 7th day. I wonder where that came from, right? Yeah, I get that. That's it's interesting. It's sometimes I wonder, like, because we'll be in mass. I have 2 good friends, and if I'm not mistaken, at least one of the 2, Dwight Yedemeyer, who's been a guest on the podcast as well.
Us
yeah,
in our
so he's had a conversation on the podcast too about his kids and all that stuff there as well. Another good friend of ours, Jeremy Touchstone, him and Dwight are pretty neck and neck as far as kids go, and thankfully we have 2 boys and they're both teenagers, so now it's okay, time to get ready for mass. They kind of know what to do now. So sometimes I think, man, I wonder what Dwight and Jeremy do, in these kind of situations. Their kids are getting older now. I know Dwight has a baby, so but there's help. They're not.
He's got the game. That's exactly
right.
That's what I was waiting to say. Is absolutely, as the kids start getting old enough to help with the other kids.
Yeah,
that's key. Like, that's everything.
Yes, it is. But now it's kind of like, as your kids get older, you kind of get in that sweet spot when they're old enough to where they can buckle themselves in. You just got to go in and make sure everything is secure, and that they did it right as far as car seats or seat belts, and they get more and more independent. It's like, okay, this is good. My wife and
it sounds like a small thing, but yes, when all 4 of my kids were able to buckle themselves into the car, that's life changing.
It saves anywhere from 5 minutes to like 15 minutes, and you're on the road. So it definitely changes your strategy for the morning. Okay, we got to get ready by this time. Head into the car by this time. If we're by this street by this time, then we're going to be good. That's kind of the way my brain works, right? So if we get this red light and it's this time, we're going to be
well. And what you probably haven't run into is, as you get the bigger crew, you need more pew space. And so if you don't, if you don't get there early enough, then you don't have enough pew space together, and then you have to split the group up. So like on Easter and stuff, that's always the debate, because you don't, especially with little kids, you don't want to get there too early. They're already going to have a hard time sitting still through all of mass, but you don't want to get there too late, because then you don't get a spot. So it's like, where's the sweet spot of,
I've never thought about that. I guess because there's 4 of us, we can always, there's probably only been a small number of times where we've had to break up into like, okay, I'll take one, you take the other, and we'll just kind of meet back over here after mass. Majority of the time we're all fitting in, one pew. So I really haven't, that's a good point. I really haven't had to come into that too much. That's interesting.
But Dwight would tell me I got nothing to complain about. So.
Interesting. Alrighty, we're gonna go ahead and get to our parting questions here. Got my son having a good time in the background there. That's my son Daniel. He's already done.
Again, man, it's just life happening around us.
It's life happening, and it's a podcast, right? So that's kind of why. That's kind of what I chalk it up to. It's a podcast. I just take joy in knowing that he's laughing. He's laughing. That means he's happy. And then I kind of wonder, okay, what is he laughing at? He's 13. So kind of one of those things where I got to circle back and, okay, well, what's so funny? So, alrighty. So we'll go ahead and get to our parting questions here. Hello, everyone. Taking a short break from this great episode to ask you a couple of questions that I think are very, very important. Are you having vision problems? Do you need a diabetic annual eye exam? Are you just plain tired of glasses and have an interest in LASIK surgery? Well, if you answer yes to one or any of these questions, do me a favor. Go ahead and call 210-692-1388. Again, that's 210-692-1388 to set up an appointment with Dr. Gary Legault at South Texas Eye Institute, or you can visit southtexaseyeinstitute.com. You may remember Dr. Legault from episode number 105, when he took time out of his day to share with us how he keeps his fire burning for our Catholic faith. Go ahead and show your support for the podcast if you find yourself having vision problems by contacting Dr. Legault. I know him personally. He's a great guy. You definitely will be in good hands with Dr. Legault. Once again, his number is 210-692-1388 or visit southtexasiinstitute.com. Ask for Dr. Legault when you set up your appointment. Now, back to the show. Get to know a little bit more about Dave. I felt like we've got to know him, more than what I've known before. But this is kind of just this is a little extra getting to know Dave here. So the first question we have here is, if you could have a superpower, what would it be and why?
So I'm a runner. I've been a distance runner for a long, long time. And so I would have to go with I'd like to be the Flash. If I could just run, have super, super fast speed, that would be, there's no good reason why, other than it would be fun, I like going fast. But I'm a distance runner, so I really don't go that fast. So I don't know, maybe there's a little anomaly there.
Gotcha. Well,
maybe it's an inferiority complex. I want the sprint speed.
There you go. You secretly always want to be a sprinter, right? Is that what it is?
It's not. That's actually not true. Gotcha. If I could hold a sprint speed for multiple miles, that would be fantastic, and that's what the Flash does.
Gotcha.
But I've always wondered with these superpowers, whether it's flying or running fast, whatever. From a metabolic perspective, how does it burn a lot of energy? You never think about Superman getting tired, but just because he can lift really heavy stuff that I wouldn't be able to lift, if I lifted at my max strength, I would be smoked afterwards. I wonder if the Flash is smoked after he runs all the way to Las Vegas, or if Superman's smoked after he lifts it. You never see that, but they should, right?
Yeah, they should. Well, I guess that may take away a little bit from the superhero element, right? It's because they can do.
They're still doing something extraordinary.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's at the edge of their capacity.
And believe me, I've looked very little into this. And when I say look into it, I mean I heard a podcast and it was mentioned. Not I've Googled it or I've read a book about it. So there's something called the fast twitch muscle and a slow twitch muscle. It's like the Kenyans have that slow twitch muscle, and that's what allows them to excel in marathons and distance running because of that type of muscle they have. So I wonder if there's something within that, if I don't know, there's a way to.
So they're all fast twitch fibers, So your muscles are made out of both of those types of fibers, and yeah, you're right. Kenyans or people who are good at distance running or endurance events have more slow twitch fibers,
right?
Fewer fast twitch, but like Usain Bolt, it's going to be all fast twitch fibers almost. He's a bad example because he's a pretty good 400-meter runner too.
That's my contribution for the podcast and sounding like I read, even though I don't. I just
there
heard someone say that on a podcast one time. So.
It was correct.
Yeah, I was able to remember it correctly. So achievement unlocked right there for me. Who are your favorite saints?
Okay, so for this one, I've got the true but not very creative answer, and then I've got a recent, more creative addition. So really, my favorite saint is Saint Francis of Assisi. Oh. So
yeah, excellent.
Very, very, very well-known saint. Yes. Not very creative, I don't think. But that's the saint that I chose for my confirmation name. I've just really always liked his focus on nature. And, that's something I meant to say with kind of the whole keeping the embers glowing. I try to see God around me, and I try to see him in everything. And so in Texas, it's easy with these beautiful skies to just sort of see that as God's signature.
Yep.
But really just kind of appreciate his creation on a very sort of continual level. And I feel like St. Francis really, he embodies that mentality of just seeing God, loving everything that he made. So that would be my true answer. For a more creative, make it look like I'm a little more learned saint, I actually picked up from one of the times we were doing the liturgy of the hours and the evening prayer.
Yep.
And there's a point in evening prayer where we get to the Canticle of Simeon. And so my creative saint is going to be, I'm not even sure if he's actually a saint, but I think it's Saint Simeon at the temple. So do you know that part in the evening prayer? So we get to the Canticle of Simeon?
Not off the top of my head. I remember when we get to that point, but the actual
Yes.
canticle itself, I don't know.
I
On the top
pulled
of
it
my
up
head.
so I could describe it, because one day we were reading that in the prayer meeting, and it really hit me. And what hit me really was actually not what Simeon said, but then I looked more into it. So you get to this part where the response for the canticle is, "Protect us, Lord, as we stay awake. Watch over us as we sleep. That awake we may keep watch with Christ, and asleep rest in his peace." And I thought that's such a cool summary. I mean, what a cool nighttime prayer, like to say it
Yep.
before you go to bed. It's such a great summary of just having the right attitude, and keeping God forefront both when you're sleeping and when you're awake. But then the almost verse version of this goes into what Simeon actually said. So I looked into who Saint Simeon was, and he is in the Gospel of Luke, he's described as a just and devout man who was at the temple when Mary brought Jesus in to kind of be presented. And there's just this description that a just and devout man came over, and he said this, and this is the verse in the Liturgy of the Hours. It's, "Lord, now you let your servant go in peace. Your word has been fulfilled. My own eyes have seen the salvation which you have prepared in the sight of every people, a light to reveal you to the nations and the glory of your people Israel." And that's it. That's all we know about St. Simeon, is that he happened to be at the temple when Mary brought Jesus in. He went over, held Jesus in his arms, and said that. Basically, he said, "Lord, now I can die. My purpose has been fulfilled." And basically, his purpose was to proclaim that this is God's light to reveal to the nations and the glory of your people. So he's basically declaring that this is the Son of God, as Jesus is brought into the temple. And what struck me, I don't know why, but what struck me about his story is that that's all we know about him. Like, his entire life is summed up by this one moment. And so I just think back on the amount of faith to even be at the temple. Like, why was he there? Like, if he had chose not to go to the temple that day, he basically doesn't exist.
Right.
But because he, I'm sure, followed God's lead and went to the temple, was there at that moment when Jesus walked in, he goes up, proclaims Jesus for who he is, says this, and and then he has a part in the Bible, a speaking part in the Bible all of a sudden.
Speaking part.
So to me, it kind of speaks to, and I'm probably having to read a lot between the lines on this, but just to allowing God to lead you where he wants to lead you. And I'm sure Simeon didn't know why he went to the temple that day, at that moment. Didn't put it off until later. He went, and he happened to be there at the right moment. And so how many times in our lives are we happen to be at the right moment, and you can kind of look back later and say, God put me there. I didn't know that I was going to be put there for that moment, but in hindsight, I can see, like, I was right where I needed to be. And how many times do we not know when we miss it, and I wouldn't want to do that. So that's just kind of what struck me about St. Simeon, just the trust, the faith to go where God puts you, and who knows, that could be the moment that defines your entire life.
Really good. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
appreciate you providing that and kind of looking more into that to kind of find that information there. That's awesome. So Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Simeon.
Saint Simeon at the temple.
At the temple. Oh, makes sense. And now, kind of reading that part, it makes sense why it's now Saint Simeon at the temple. So Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Simeon at the temple, pray for us. Excellent. So now, next question here is, where is the coolest Catholic place you've ever been to?
So I have two answers for this one as well. And one of them is not in and of itself all that cool, but it's a really cool story.
Okay.
It was more of like an internal feeling. So I'll start with that one. So I was deployed in 2003, like the first push over into Iraq. I went with the 101st. I was in Iraq while Saddam Hussein was still in power. And so that started with, I had been at Fort Campbell about a year, and there was a priest, kind of a younger priest, a lot of energy, who was the main chaplain on post. And I really liked him. I mean, he was one of those guys that kind of got you excited to go to Mass. And at any rate, so I mean, that's kind of some good background. Get deployed, and so the way that looked, like, we flew into Kuwait in the middle of the night. From Kuwait, we got shuttled into these buses, felt like hundreds of buses, probably dozens of buses, but lots of these buses with windows, but there was curtains on the windows. And we were told it was because they didn't want people being able to count how many soldiers were coming in. And so you're just feeling very sort of snuck into the country. Mm-hmm. We drive from the airport. We get these curtains on these windows where we really can't see. And we start driving. And all of a sudden, we're in the middle of sand, in the middle of nowhere. We get out to this Camp New York. There was all these camps set up. But they were basically just, drew a big circle in the sand and called that a little outpost. And so you get off this bus, and it is flat for as far as you can see. There's not so much as a blade of grass in 360 degrees for as far as you can see. So I'm literally feeling in the middle of nowhere, very isolated. And within a day or two, we had the first kind of mass, right? So we're like, hey, go to the chapel tent, and there's going to be a Catholic mass. And so, it's important to just kind of know, like, I'm just feeling really isolated in this spot. Mm. It wasn't depressing or anything, but it was very unsettling, right? And walk into the chapel tent, and there's the priest from Fort Campbell, the one I really liked. He was the division priest. He was there going to say mass, and so it just hit me. So this was really more of an internal thing where I was feeling kind of isolated. I walk in, and it's like, wow, I did not expect to see him. And it just really made me feel viscerally that God won't leave you. Mm. And the whole, wherever you go, he'll go, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he's there by your side. All of that. I mean, I just really felt that in a very real way. I was the only mass that priest was at, because we got, he went off with another unit later, but it was just enough to, at the outset of that deployment, to feel like even out here in the literal middle of nowhere, where I cannot, I can see for as far as I can see, and there's nothing. God's here, Wow. And it was just, I think it was just so cool that it was that priest. So I'm sure that having mass would have been great, but the fact that priest was there, it's like, wow, God came with me. The priest really at that moment was sort of the personification of Jesus for me. He's right here with me. It was pretty cool.
Excellent. That's a great story. I'm sure the feeling that you got, walking into that area and seeing that priest is like, oh wow, it's like, it must have been a overwhelming feeling of, joy and happiness and surprise.
Overwhelming is the right word, for sure. If there's time, I have another cool actual Catholic place.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So have you heard of the Scala Sancta or Scala Santa?
No.
The Holy Steps in Rome.
Okay.
So there's these stairs in Rome that they're outside of the. There's a bunch of basilicas in Rome, right? So the one is St. John in Laterano, I think is how you say it. But anyway, there's these steps just outside of that. They built this whole chapel around it. It's 28 marble steps that are said to be the stairs that Jesus climbed in Jerusalem up to Pontius Pilate's palace on his way to the trial where he was condemned to death. And so these steps, according to legend, had been brought back from Jerusalem by Constantine, the emperor's mother. She brought him back to Rome. And so for centuries, this has been celebrated as the stairs Jesus climbed. That's what they're called, the Holy Steps. And the tradition is you climb up them on your knees. And so you start at the bottom, 28 marble steps, and you climb up on your knee and you say, "In Our Father." And then you climb up on the next one and you say, "In Our Father." So each one is saying Our Father.
Wow.
They're pretty steep. And at the top is this big fresco of Christ on the cross. And he's kind of looking down at you. And so it's this very moving place to be, because you're contemplating on Christ. You're looking at him. He's looking at you out of the fresco. Anyway, so I was very interested in going there when my wife and I went to Rome. But we didn't have a lot of time, and so we thought, we'll just go in, we'll kind of see it. I really wanted to go up the steps, so she was willing to do it. And I said, look, we're both young. We're in our mid-20s. We're both distance runners. We're just we'll get in there, we'll zip up the steps, and then we'll go on to what we need to do. But then we'll get to say that we did it, right? So we get in there. There weren't a lot of people there, but just so happened there's like 5 old nuns got in right in front of us. And so we thought, oh man, here I thought we were going to just like zip up these stairs. And here's all these old nuns. We're going to end up having to wait for them, right? So we start out, and the first step, we're kind of waiting on the nuns. And the next step, we're kind of waiting on the nuns. And after about 4 or 5, it's like, this is starting to hurt, right? Like on your knees. And and it got to the point where saying that Our Father was like the break from moving, because moving up to the next step on your knees, that was what was really painful. So saying the Our Father was like this break that you could get. So for one, it was kind of cool how painful it really was, because it made it more visceral. You're staring at Christ and you're starting to feel physical pain as you're climbing up these steps. But we started to notice after a while, as the Our Fathers aren't quite long enough, I'm not quite ready to move to the next step, I'm not recovered. The nuns are starting to gap us. And so these old nuns that we thought we were going to be stuck behind, they toasted us. And that was pretty cool. And then what's even cooler is, again, it's this very holy feeling place. Christ looking at you. You're sharing a very small piece of physical pain. You would think it's this very somber location, right? The nuns get to the top, and it's silent. I mean, it's completely silent as you're going up. The nuns get to the top, and right in front of this fresco of Jesus, they as soon as all 5 of them get up, they're like, "Woo!" and they start high-fiving. They took a picture. So that was pretty cool too. I mean, it was kind of neat to break the somberness, and to have the nuns. Had anyone else done it, we would have thought it was incredibly sacrilegious. But to have the nuns do it, and be like, you know what, you can have fun with your religion too.
Yeah.
So, but that was really neat. If you're ever in Rome, that is a really cool place to get to see. And I guess there's stuff we didn't really explore it all, but I guess there's stuff at the top, and there's side steps if you don't want to. You can't go up on your knees. You can go up the side and still.
Wow, that's
a neat place.
That's awesome. That's an amazing story. I think kind of the nuns doing that was kind of like that comic relief that was needed, right? It's like you're in the midst of this suffering yourself, and you're trying to finish the race, as it was there, and you see the nuns get up there and high five and take pictures. It's like, okay, well, if they did it, that means we can do it too. So
I mean, the nuns like made it, because for one, they humbled the heck out of us.
Oh, I bet.
Here we thought we were these young pups, and they smoked us, and then they broke the tension too, and had fun with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what's the name of that place again?
It's called the Scala Sancta. And I believe that's Italian for Holy Steps.
Holy Steps in Rome. Gotcha. Okay. I'll do some research on my end. And for those listening who want to know more about that.
If you Google, because this is how I found it. I won't lie. I didn't remember the name. I had to look it up because I knew I wanted to tell that story.
Yeah.
I Googled Jesus Steps Rome, and they came up.
Gotcha. Jesus Steps Rome. That's what I'll look up. And
there you go.
I'll find a link and I'll put it on the show description there as well. So for anyone who's kind of curious about that, definitely the information will be on there. So that's awesome.
I will disclaimer that there's a lot of doubt as to whether or not they're really the steps as well. But they serve the purpose.
It serves a purpose, and it's definitely a lesson in many things. One of them being humility, right?
For sure.
Especially if there's nuns in line with you right there. Chances are they're going to make it there first. So, and again, another kind of example of what I mean by being intentional, right? Like you don't have to go up those steps, but when you start it, you're going to finish it. It's being intentional. So, alrighty. So, last question I have for you, Dave. What message would you like to leave for our listeners?
I would say a message that I'm struggling with and trying to fulfill myself, and that's just having patience with everyone out there. Right. Right now, there's a lot of frustration with multiple topics and scenarios, multiple political or pandemic themes. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of misunderstanding. And so just trying to have patience and love for other people, trying to understand if people disagree with you or see things a different way. Everybody's scared. Everybody's confused. Nobody really has the right answer. And so just patience.
Excellent. That's a good point. It's very true, especially in today's current climate. As you mentioned a moment ago, it is one of those things where every day has now become a exercise in patience. I kind of find myself still on social media, but kind of having second thoughts if I should or not, just so that way I don't encounter anything that may cause me to raise my eyebrow or kind of think a certain way about a certain person. But it's just one thing where it's like, okay, we just have some patience here.
And really, it's social media. I agree, and that's where it's so easy to just sort of spout off And then you get lost in trying to win an argument instead of show love, show patience for the other person. And people behave very differently than they would if they were face to face with the person.
Right. And honestly, that's kind of where I feel I'm struggling, is how do I show love to these people? There's some folks that I'm kind of shocked with what's going on, and it's like how do I how do I show them love? I don't feel like by not saying anything, I'm not showing them love. So that's one.
Well, if I circle back to something you said earlier, when you said you were praying for the attackers for September 11th, I think that might be a great strategy of like, let me step back, take a moment, pray for these people. And I'm telling you, in the 30 seconds you were talking, it made me suddenly have a different appreciation for who those people are. And, obviously anybody you're getting into an argument with on social media would be nowhere near that level of evil act. And so maybe just stepping back and praying for the person first.
Yes. That's good. That's you're the second person in the past probably about a week and a half to kind of tell me that too. So I think God's sending me a brick going, I'm beating you over the head with it by having these people telling you just do it. So yes, thanks for that reminder. Yes, indeed. So that may be one of the lessons and one of the takeaways from today's episode is, if you're struggling with how to show love to folks maybe that you're not in agreement with, in whatever the scope is, just pray for them, right? Pray for them is one of the ways that you can definitely show them love. So thanks for that. Alrighty. Well, Dave, I want to thank you for coming on, for taking some time out of your day today and sharing with us how you keep your fire burning for our Catholic faith, for sharing with us your experiences of 9/11, literally being snuck into the country and seeing the priest there and the Jesus steps as they were. So thank you very much for sharing with us how you keep your fire burning for our Catholic faith. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Indeed.
I learned a lot
myself. As did I. So mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. In John 3:30, we do find that he must increase, I must decrease. I want to give a special thanks to my executive producers for this episode here. That would be Dr. Jeff Vista, my brother Joe Nunez, the 2019 Men's Acts team, Dr. Gary Legault, who is now a sponsor of the podcast. Thank you so much, Dr. Legault, for that. And the 2 anonymous donors for their generous support at the end of 2019 and about a month ago. Thank you for your support. For those that are listening, if you're trying to find a way to have a mask readily available and also try to evangelize, I am selling John 3:30 podcast masks. So they are reusable, hand wash only. Please don't put them in the washing machine. The logo will come off. So if you do decide to buy one, hand wash only, please. They're only $10. They're black. The logo is white. They're reusable. They're awesome. They're comfortable. My brother has a very healthy and hefty beard, and he has one. I asked him how it fit with the beard, and he says that it fit great. So for anyone that has a beard, definitely is an option for you as well. So you can contact me at john330podcast@gmail.com if you're interested in buying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 of them. So again, $10 each. All the proceeds I get go right back into the podcast, help pay for the monthly distribution, help us either upgrade equipment to have a better audio quality. Seriously, I'm thinking about going back to a dynamic microphone compared to what I'm using now. That way it picks up less of the background noise. So any support that is sent my way, either through Patreon, which you can support monthly or one time, or by sending a direct donation to PayPal, all that goes right back into the podcast itself. So thanking you in advance. Thank you for those who have supported us in the past as well. And thanks to those who have purchased a mask already. So thank you so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. We're going to end this episode the way the Nunez family ends our time every time we attend Mass. And that is by saying the intercessory prayer to St. Michael the Archangel. Here we go. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl around the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Alrighty, Dave, once again, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Alrighty. For everyone listening, thank you for joining us once again. Stay tuned for another episode sometime soon. And until then, stay well by God's grace. God bless you all.
From the day I leapt in the womb to the joy of the empty tomb, I know he lived and died for me. From heaven high above, a voice came down with the dove. This is my son and I am pleased. He must increase, so I must decrease. And now my heart is open wide. I must decrease so he can increase. He is the center of my life.